You were fed comforting stories from childhood, and you quietly repeated them until they hardened into a script that kept you small. Meanwhile, someone you will never meet is inhabiting the existence you privately labeled unreachable. That person receives the deference you try to earn by over-explaining. That person occupies space you yield before anyone asks. That person assembles the structure you only sketch in your mind while scrolling another highlight reel at 2 in the morning. Feeling that heavy pull inside your chest and hearing the question that refuses to settle, when does my turn arrive? That question haunted every day for a long time. People who did not outthink me somehow outran me. Doors opened for those who mistook noise for signal while I was busy proving basic competence to audiences that would not notice excellence if it stood in front of them. Frustration boiled until it resembled a quiet furnace. It felt like a tournament with rules designed to ensure I would always fall short. The reversal began the day I stopped assuming the field was fixed and started learning the operating code that actually governs outcomes. What shifted for me can shift for you, because the pattern is teachable. The system is not fate, and it is not a conspiracy. It is a set of behaviors that reward those who understand human attention, perceived status, and controlled disclosure. While you were trained to be polite, wait patiently, and ask for your share, others studied how influence travels between minds, how certainty looks, and how to project it without begging. They learned to build an inner keel so steady that outside turbulence never dictates direction. The painful truth that rarely gets spoken aloud is simple. Talent without sovereignty loses to average skill with self-permission. You are not excluded because you are unworthy. You are delayed because you still request approval from people who only feel safe when you remain predictable. Stop seeking a stamp you do not need. Stop postponing action until you receive applause. Stop rehearsing the rules written by gatekeepers who benefit from your hesitation. Decide to author your ascent rather than audition for it. The moment that decision becomes real, you stop reading the room to figure out what it wants and start shaping the room by what you embody. Over the next minutes, internalize a small set of psychological levers that separate those who select outcomes from those who accept leftovers. When you understand why some individuals are granted deference without asking, why opportunities cluster around them without pleading, and why they move like owners rather than participants, you stop mistaking inspiration for progress and begin operating with precision. Here is the first lever, and it is counterintuitive. Your tongue builds your trap. In my early 20s, I sat at a table where monthly income figures dwarfed my annual pay. Convinced I needed to justify my chair, I stuffed every pause with clever remarks and anxious commentary. I confused presence with talking and contribution with volume. The quietest person in that room spoke fewer than a dozen sentences. Each time they did, posture changed, pen stopped, eyes lifted. Each silence that followed their brief question made others fidget and reveal more than they intended. That is when the lesson landed. Words are currency. Spend carelessly and you tell the world your price. Explanations reveal your insecurity. Nervous chatter signals that the comfort of strangers matters more to you than your own leverage. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a mirror that makes others see themselves. When you resist the urge to cushion every gap, people begin projecting their anxieties onto your calm. They assume you are measuring. They assume you perceive what they are trying to hide. They assume you have options. Those assumptions shift bargaining power before any proposal appears. When you flood the air, you donate data, you surrender ambiguity, and you allow others to map you. When you hold your words, you receive information without asking. A Florentine political thinker once observed that appearance is common knowledge, while essence is rare experience. Let your restraint create that gap. When others fill silence, they disclose fears, motives, and thresholds. They announce which outcomes they must avoid and which concessions they will trade. You become the person the table tries to impress, not because you demanded attention, but because your economy of speech implies discipline. I began practicing immediately. I entered conversations to listen for structure, not to audition for approval. I stopped trying to be the most interesting person in the room and decided to be the most interested. The result was instant and obvious. Questions flowed toward me. People sought my read before acting, and access arrived without me pleading for it. The second lever, feelings inform, they do not define. Someone I trusted once turned confidential admissions into public theater. Personal details I had shared were rearranged for laughs in a room whose opinion I believed mattered. Fire raced up my throat. Reflex wanted to argue, clarify, demand fairness. Pride told me to reclaim the narrative. I chose stillness, not because I am indifferent. Because discipline in storm conditions is a competitive advantage no resume can list. Emotions are signals, not destiny. They rise, crest, and fade. Treat them like weather passing over an ocean you own. You measure, you plan, and you steer. You do not let a gust choose your harbor. That moment taught a practice that now anchors everything. When someone baits you, you gather data. When someone betrays you, you record patterns. When someone tries to steer your feelings, you deny them the satisfaction of predictable compliance. You are not becoming stone. You are becoming sovereign. Calm inside disorder becomes the lighthouse others steer toward. People bring you real responsibilities when they learn that pressure does not warp your judgment. They trust you with bigger ranges because you do not add noise to a situation that already has too much sound. Another principle follows naturally. Guard information as if it were equity. I once believed openness proved integrity. I narrated plans, doubts, and ambitions to any friendly face. I mistook vulnerability performed on cue for courage. Then I noticed how casually shared details boomeranged as rumors, how dream outlines became punchlines, how disclosed insecurities returned as levers others pulled at convenient times. The lesson was not to hide from life. The lesson was to price access to your interior world. Scarcity creates value. Mystery creates altitude. The less people know about your process, the more they must respect your outcomes. Information asymmetry is the oldest form of leverage. In every exchange, one party knows something the other does not. Make sure you are the one who curates that flow. Treat personal data like a classified file, not because you fear discovery, but because you refuse to donate leverage. Share intentionally, late, and only with those who have earned alignment through behavior over time. Meanwhile, become an attentive archivist. People broadcast their patterns if you stop centering yourself long enough to hear them. Pride makes them brag about strategies. Frustration makes them confess weak points. Excuses reveal where they will quit. That is not manipulation. That is literacy. From here, move to posture. Bodies speak first. Before a sentence begins, listeners read your stance, your breathing, your pace. Practice slow inhales that settle the ribs. Keep both feet connected to the ground. Lift your gaze rather than your chin. Place hands where you can see them and the room can see them. Speak slightly slower than you think you should. Pause before responding as if you are weighing choices, not chasing approval. All of this communicates that your time is not a commodity, your opinion is not vending machine candy, and your presence is a decision others should treat with care. Then consider boundaries as architecture rather than slogans. A line that can be crossed without consequence is decoration. Define what you will not tolerate. Decide what happens the first time it appears, and then follow through without raised voice or dramatic speeches. Quiet consequences teach faster than long lectures. If a client tramples scope, renegotiate immediately or walk away. If a colleague uses your work without credit, address it once in writing and copy the right people. If a friend leaks private details, change the level of access today, not after the third apology. Consistency builds reputation. Reputation compounds. Next, cultivate option-rich living. Power expands with alternatives. Cultivate skills that travel across domains. Build relationships laterally, not only upward. Keep a small reserve of time and money that no one can see and no one can claim. When schedules are fully booked and accounts are fully allocated, desperation leaks into your choices. You start accepting terms that offend your standards. Keep a cushion precise enough to say no when no is the correct answer. People sense when you cannot refuse. They sense when you can. Terms improve the moment you are comfortable letting a deal pass. Now study framing. The first narrative to land often becomes the lens through which all later facts are interpreted. Arrive early to a discussion with a simple, memorable picture of the situation and a clear definition of success. Offer language that others can repeat. Anchor expectations before numbers appear. Name constraints truthfully, but pair them with levers within reach. When you seed accurate frames, you prevent confusion from becoming the story. When you let others define the frame, you end up arguing inside someone else's picture. Protect energy by designing friction. Default acceptance destroys focus. Remove apps from the home screen. Set reply windows rather than living inside your inbox. Place meetings back-to-back one morning a week and protect the rest of the week for deep work. Build social rules that keep low-value drama out of your day. The person with the fewest drains on attention makes higher quality decisions. Attention is the scarcest resource that you control entirely. Guard it with the seriousness of an investor stewarding capital. Include one more lever many ignore: reputational compounding. Every promise either matures into trust or defaults into suspicion. Deliver slightly more than you committed, faster than expected, with less whining than is typical. Document outcomes. Publicly credit collaborators. Privately own mistakes. Over a year, this feels unglamorous. Over 5 years, doors greet you already open. People speak for you in rooms you never enter. Your name becomes shorthand for reliability. That brand is not a logo. It is the residue of decisions made when it would have been easier to cut corners. All of these tools matter, yet they require a decision at the center. Stop narrating a powerless identity. Self-talk trains posture. Replace questions like "who will let me" with questions like "who can stop me if I am committed and prepared." Replace "I hope they like me" with "I will be useful," and usefulness earns respect. Replace "I am behind" with "I am early in a long arc and I will stack wins daily." Words are not magic. They are instructions your nervous system obeys. Give better instructions. Turn to negotiation. The best deals happen before either side sits down. You create leverage by being the person who would improve any project you touch, and by signaling that your calendar fills honestly. You protect price by referencing outcomes, not hours. You ask what problem is truly expensive for the other party, and you design your scope to solve that problem while leaving unprofitable noise outside the fence. You let silence do its work after you name your terms. The side that rushes to fill the quiet usually surrenders the advantage. Leadership follows naturally when you practice these habits. People will treat you as an anchor in storms because you do not swing wildly. You will attract competent allies because chaos merchants find no purchase in your presence. You will mentor without announcing it by modeling self-respect, clarity, and follow-through. You will not need to declare that you are in charge. Group behavior will drift toward your cadence because calm rhythm is rare and valuable. At this point, you might ask for a ritual to install the shift. Here is one. Choose one room this week in which you currently diminish yourself. Enter that room with a clear intention. Make fewer statements, ask sharper questions, and allow others to reveal themselves. Keep your shoulders low. Nod less. Take notes. Speak when you see structure, not when you feel discomfort. Afterward, write down what you learned about motives, priorities, and fault lines. Use that map to decide your next action. Repeat every week in a different room. Measurable change begins to show. Complement the ritual with a constraint. No explanations unless asked twice. The first time someone pressures you to justify a boundary or a decision, hold your ground with a calm sentence. If they accept it, move on. If they ask again, offer a concise reason and end there. You are not on trial. Your life is not a debate club. Adults can coexist with choices they do not prefer. If they cannot, that is diagnostic information you needed sooner. Finally, set a private commitment that replaces permission-seeking with choosing. Write one line in a notebook and mean it. "I am done petitioning for value I already bring." Then act like the sentence is a contract. Submit the proposal. Decline the cheap project. Ask for the budget you require. Stop announcing that you want respect. Behave in ways that make disrespect costly for anyone who tries it. You will not transform overnight, but you will notice momentum. Rooms will start to adjust to you rather than the other way around. When you put all of this to work, you will notice that you think differently. Yes, but more importantly, you will move differently and speak differently. You will conserve words until they matter. You will notice that your face stays calm when others perform outrage. You will release the fantasy that full disclosure wins affection, and you will develop the adult muscle of selective revelation. You will build systems that protect your attention. You will multiply options that protect your standards, and you will let your record compounding quietly while others spend their energy building appearances. There is one more habit to seal the change. At the start of each week, choose 2 crucial conversations in which you will practice strategic, quiet, and structured questions. At the end of the week, assess the outcomes briefly. Did you learn more than usual? Did people lean forward? Did a request arrive without you pushing? Keep a simple ledger. Improvement likes proof. Over months, the ledger will show a clear curve upward, and you will not need anyone to tell you whether the new operating system is working. Evidence will be boring and undeniable. The stories you were handed taught you to wait for a signal from outside. That signal is not coming. You become the signal. You do it by mastering restraint, translating feelings into data, pricing access to yourself, moving with posture that communicates self-respect, enforcing boundaries with small, consistent consequences, expanding options on purpose, framing before someone else frames you, defending attention with designed friction, and letting reputation grow like invested capital. This is not theory. This is practice you can begin today. Type a sentence somewhere you will see it every morning and every night. I no longer ask. I choose. Then honor it in small ways until those small ways become your default state. No one will hand you permission to be formidable. No one needs to. You are the author here. The room will learn it as soon as you decide to act like it. Control of choices shapes the finish line, which is why those who master timing rarely feel blindsided. Facts are not trophies to store in a cabinet forever. They are tools to deploy with care at the moment of greatest leverage. When you pace disclosure, when you decide who learns what and when, you steer the dialogue before it starts. Patterns show themselves early to anyone watching closely. Learn to watch, learn to wait, learn to release a single detail at the exact second it tilts the table, and other people's surprises begin to look like calendar reminders you wrote weeks ago. For years, I confused pleasantness with protection. I was helpful, flexible, available, and allergic to friction. I kept my head low and my tone warm, hoping that consistent kindness would be seen as irreplaceable value. Promotions went to people who did not smile as much, who did not stay late to adjust everyone else's slides, but who produced outcomes that changed the trajectory of the work. That sting taught the rule polite society rarely voices. Being easy to manage makes you easy to swap. Being agreeable fills calendars, not balance sheets. Security grows from impact that would be expensive to replicate, not from being the person who never raises a difficult point. Competence is protection against weather you do not control. When you are exceptionally good at something central, the conversation shifts from whether your preferences are convenient to how to align around your capabilities. Clear limits, firm standards, and a refusal to perform politics become tolerable because results force the issue. People may not adore your directness or your insistence on scope or your habit of declining gossip, but they need the outcomes you deliver more than they need the sensation of constant ease. That reality gives you room to choose your posture rather than begging for approval you already earned. Through consistent performance. Building. That level of reliability looks nothing like going through the motions. It involves learning your domain faster and deeper than colleagues who have twice your tenure, mapping interdependencies that others treat as noise, and spotting the early signals of failure before budgets burn. It means proposing a cleaner workflow when the current one wastes days and piloting it responsibly with the humility to revise. Most people avoid this because introducing a better order threatens the comfort of the current one. Taking the first step invites risk. Yet the difficulty of change is precisely why the person who can design and land it becomes pivotal rather than peripheral. When you commit to mastery, something interesting happens around you. People begin to examine how you work instead of arguing with what you ask for. They stop tinkering with your process and start trying to keep you in the room. Your value becomes quantifiable in the time, money, and uncertainty it would cost to replace you. That is the moment the conversation stops being about whether you are nice enough to include and becomes about whether the organization can afford to lose you. I chose to specialize until I could answer questions veterans had stopped asking. I removed chronic bottlenecks others accepted as furniture. The ripple was immediate. Requests arrived with better terms. Doors that once required knocking began to open on their own. Do not waste oxygen proving your direction to people invested in not hearing you. I left a stable role to pursue a path that looked foolish to those who needed me to remain predictable. I drafted plans, mapped cash flow, tested demand. The response was outrage, pity, and forecasts of disaster. Nothing I showed could land, because the argument was not about data. It was about their equilibrium. They required me to fail so their comfort could remain intact. There is no sentence persuasive enough to overturn a conclusion born from fear. You cannot reason someone out of a story that keeps them safe. Freeing yourself from that loop gives you back hours of life. Energy spent on explanations becomes energy. You can invest in people who see your trajectory without a slideshow. The right collaborators will not demand courtroom briefs before they extend trust. The right projects will not require you to shrink into an old costume. Selectivity is not cruelty. It is stewardship. Build a short list of voices that have earned influence through accuracy and care. Treat the rest like background noise. When someone demonstrates that they are attached to a flat picture of you, note the signal and stop paying the subscription. Independence does not grow in empty calendars. It grows in frameworks you design to carry your goals forward whether anyone else cooperates or not. I used to equate freedom with refusing structure, choosing at random, sleeping past alarms. saying yes only to what felt exciting in the moment. That was not freedom. That was drift. True autonomy is a system of habits, tools, and agreements that protect time for high-value work, that keep money moving from one engine to the next, that place approval inside your own review rather than in the hands of a mercurial audience. Without those systems, every day hinges on someone else's plan. You learn this most clearly when multiple supports vanish. I watched employment dissolve, a relationship end, and social reliability falter in the span of a few weeks. The shock stripped away a comforting illusion. What I thought I owned, I was renting from circumstances. The rebuild began with a painful, clarifying question. What would a week look like if my finances, mood, and schedule did not hinge on outside steadiness? The answer required paying a price many postpone. Patience instead of dopamine. Delayed payoff instead of quick applause. Repetition where novelty once hid the lack of progress. Systems mean diversified income rather than a single paycheck. Portable skills rather than proprietary procedures only one company uses. A personal scoreboard that tracks your standards rather than constant refreshes to see if someone noticed. It can mean a blocked morning for deep work and an afternoon for outreach. It can mean templates for proposals and checklists for delivery. It can mean a modest reserve that removes panic from negotiations. None of that isolates you. It equips you. With systems, collaboration becomes choice, not obligation. You can partner without giving up your steering wheel. You can commit while preserving self-respect. The emotional dividends are immediate. Economic uncertainty stops feeling like a cliff because you built stairs. Shifts in relationships do not smash your identity because your worth is not borrowed. You tolerate less nonsense because you are not bargaining from empty cupboards. Dependencies make you a line item others can edit. Systems turn you into a peer who can walk away. That difference changes tone in every room. Options are not vanity. Options are a shield. There is one discipline that protects all the rest, and many run from it because it requires clear choices. Strategic ruthlessness is not tearing people down. It is refusing to subsidize patterns that keep both of you stuck. I held onto a friendship long after it stopped being mutual effort and became a recurring bailout. I called it loyalty. In practice, it was avoidance. Hours went toward circular conversations instead of toward work that would move a future version of both of us forward. The turning point arrived when I measured the trade with honesty. Attention is finite. Every yes reduces what remains. Giving that yes to chronic crisis meant starving my obligations and the people who were showing up with reciprocity. Prioritizing does not require hostility. It requires clarity about where your path is headed and the spine to endure a few raised eyebrows. Sometimes the kindest move is to stop cushioning consequences long enough for growth to become necessary. Sometimes the loving act is to decline the fourth rescue and offer resources only if genuine effort appears. Consider your time, money, and focus like a modest fund that must be allocated. Frugality with resources now can fund generosity later, just as a leader who resists constant giveaways can later support a wider circle with stability that would not exist if everything were drained early. Those who build remarkable outcomes are not always the most talented at the starting line. They are the ones willing to invite short-term discomfort in exchange for compound gains. They are the ones who will bear the awkwardness of saying no in order to protect a longer horizon. They accept that someone will be disappointed today so that more people, including themselves, can benefit tomorrow. Designer decisions look harsh to observers who do not track the math. Over time, the ledger vindicates the approach. The harvest proves the planting. Here is an untouchable truth worth holding close in the moments you doubt your pace. You are not late. You are not disqualified. You are not defined by detours or underestimated by some cosmic tally. You were taught to apologize for ambition, to equate healthy boundaries with defect, to translate the wish to lead into selfishness. Those lessons serve institutions that prefer compliant contributors. They serve insecure peers who need you to occupy less space so their choices feel sufficient. You can set those lessons down the moment you recognize them as tools that were used on you and are no longer needed. Your task is not to draw attention with noise. Your task is to become a presence that recalibrates rooms without raising your voice. Do it through deep capability, through clear strategies, through a tempered emotional state that absorbs heat without flinching, through infrastructure that keeps you steady when others wobble. This is not a costume you put on. It is a return to an original setting beneath fear and performance. Becoming yourself at full scale is less about invention than about subtraction. Removing the scripts that taught you to seek permission for standing where you already belong. Many live like they are waiting for a letter that will never come. Approval from a manager, recognition from a partner, applause from an audience, absolution from a family myth. You can choose a different posture. Permission is not a certificate granted by a committee. It is a private decision to act as the owner of your minutes. You do not need to post a manifesto about that decision. People will feel it in how you schedule, how you answer, how you decline. Real authority announces itself in habits long before it arrives in titles. The relationships aligned with this evolution will adapt and deepen because mutual respect replaces silent expectations. Opportunities that match your preparation will spot you from across the hall. The rest will fall away, and their absence will make room for what you were building capacity to carry. See placeholders for what they are. They kept a seat warm until you were ready to occupy it fully. There is no malice in moving past them. There is only momentum. Everything shared here points to one conclusion. Stop pleading and choose. Withhold explanations where they are wasted and invest them where curiosity is sincere. Step away from cycles that drain and toward systems that replenish. Become the person whose contribution is too expensive to dismiss. Keep learning until you can map the problem more elegantly than anyone in the room. Price your attention appropriately. Practice silence until others fill it with the data you need. And remember that the most memorable person is often the one who let quiet do the introduction. If you want a simple practice to start this week, pick 2 meetings or conversations. In each, ask one precise question that reveals incentives, then say less than you want to say. Notice what surfaces. Afterward, record 3 things you learned that you would have missed if you had tried to impress. Repeat next week. Improvement becomes visible quickly when you measure it. Another practice is the 2-request rule. Offer a concise statement once. If pressed again, give a brief reason. If pressed a 3rd time, choose action over argument. You are not required to litigate your boundaries to those who profit from crossing them. Write a sentence where you can see it morning and night. I will stop renting my future from other people's decisions. Then sign it with behavior. Send the proposal. Decline the underpriced gig. Block a daily window for work that compounds. Take the course that plugs a capability gap. Refuse the meeting that has no agenda. When others see that you treat your time as capital, they will treat it that way too, or they will drift out of orbit. Either outcome is useful. You do not need to shout. Presence at the right frequency is enough. Rooms remember the person whose calm changed the speed of the conversation, whose questions made blurry ideas sharpen, whose standards made the work better. If you are finished being steered by habits that never served you, act accordingly. If you are ready to feel what it is like to be unshakable, start by choosing a single lever from this page and pulling it today. You did not need a permit to begin. You only needed the decision to proceed.